There are moments in life when a simple decision sets off a storm. For me, it was letting my daughter Isabella celebrate her 18th birthday at our community pavilion. That spring afternoon, the sun was shining over Cedar Lake Gardens, our upscale lakeside condo. The water's reflection was dancing on the windows of the mansions lined up around us. It all looked perfect. Isabella was glowing next to her friends Jessica and Madison. Colorful balloons decorated the space, and a small table with snacks and sodas completed the scene. My daughter deserved to celebrate because she'd just been accepted at the University of California. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this. Thanks for everything, Dad, Isabella said as she hugged me, her eyes shining with happiness. Ever since the divorce 5 years ago, I've tried to be a constant presence in her life. As an architect, I get to work from home often, creating the balance we need. The sound of heels tapping on the wooden floor interrupted our moment. Camilla Stevens, 57, the head of the Homeowners Association, was marching toward us. Her face already had that expression everyone in the community dreaded. "Mr. Roberts, this is an unauthorized meeting," she declared, adjusting her sharp blazer. "You are not allowed to use this space." "Camilla, I booked the pavilion last week," I replied calmly. "I spoke directly with Olivia from management." "That doesn't show up in the system," she snapped, casting a disdainful look at the teenagers. "And apparently, there's alcohol consumption by underage kids." A bottle of empty champagne was lying near the trash can. It didn't belong to the girls, probably left behind by whoever used the space before. But before I could explain, Camilla grabbed the bottle and moved toward Isabella. "Let's see if you've been drinking, young lady," she said, forcing the bottle's neck against my daughter's lips. Isabella pulled back in fear as Camilla grabbed her arm. The humiliation I saw in my daughter's eyes awakened something primal in me. "Take your hands off her!" My voice echoed through the pavilion. I pushed Camilla away with a firm movement. "You have no right to touch my daughter." Isabella's friends were frozen. Jessica discreetly snapped photos of the scene with her phone. "Your residency contract prohibits unauthorized parties and alcohol consumption in the common areas," Camilla fired back, readjusting herself. "You have 5 minutes to leave, or I'll call security." I gathered the girls and we left, with Isabella visibly trembling. On our way home, the silence was heavy. Finally, my daughter spoke up. "What if the college finds out about this? They'll think I'm a troublemaker." "Don't worry," I assured her, even though I wasn't entirely convinced by my own words. "No one's going to believe her." The next morning, I received an email, "Extraordinary Meeting of the Homeowners Association, subject, violations by resident Alexander Roberts, attendance mandatory." Camilla was already preparing her counterattack. That evening, I entered the community's meeting room. Some board members were already there, along with Camilla's usual allies. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," she began, "I called this meeting to discuss serious infractions committed by resident Alexander Roberts and his underage daughter." "My daughter is 18, I corrected. "And no infraction has occurred." Camilla continued as if I hadn't spoken: "Unauthorized use of the pavilion, alcohol consumption by minors, disrespect to the management." While she was listing what she claimed were my violations, the door opened. A 68-year-old man with graying hair and an impeccable posture walked in, accompanied by an elegant woman. "Mr. Judge!" George Harrison, one of the board members, exclaimed. A murmur spread through the room. Judge Thomas Reynolds, my ex-father-in-law whom I hadn't seen in 5 years since the divorce, walked to the table. Next to him, Margaret, my ex-mother-in-law, smiled discreetly at me. "It seems I've joined a discussion about an incident involving my granddaughter," announced Judge Reynolds, his voice filling the room. "As an interested party and defense attorney for Mr. Roberts, I request all the details of this case." For the first time, I saw Camilla Stevens lose her composure. The silence in the room was palpable. Camilla quickly regained her controlled expression, but something in her eyes changed when she noticed who had just walked in. "Judge Reynolds, what a pleasant surprise having you with us," she said, adjusting her tone to sound more cordial. this is just a routine administrative meeting to discuss violations of the condo rules. Thomas Reynolds remained impassive. It doesn't seem routine when it involves false accusations against my granddaughter. Let's stick to the facts, Mrs. Stevens. The rules are clear, Judge Reynolds, even for you. Camilla tried to maintain control. Your former son-in-law. Ex-son-in-law, Thomas corrected. Ex-son-in-law, she continued, held an unauthorized party where underage kids consumed alcohol. At that moment, Isabella's friends, Jessica and Madison, entered the room. It wasn't planned, but apparently Thomas had contacted them. That's not true, protested Jessica, stepping forward with determination. We were just celebrating Isabella's birthday. No one was drinking. Madison nodded emphatically. It's true. Mrs. Stevens showed up and started accusing us for no reason. Camilla's expression hardened. I found an empty champagne bottle. Which wasn't ours, Isabella interjected, following closely behind the girls. Her face was red, but her voice was firm. And you grabbed my arm and tried to force the bottle against my lips. A murmur of outrage ran through the room. The board members exchanged uneasy looks. This is ridiculous, Camilla tried to laugh, but it came off forced. An adolescent making exaggerated accusations to escape responsibility. I have proof, said Jessica, holding up her phone. I took pictures of everything. The images appeared on the room's screen when George Harrison, the association's technology director, connected the phone to the system. The sequence was clear, Camilla holding Isabella's arm, the bottle near my daughter's face, the terror in her eyes. Laura Simmons, a neighbor who happened to be passing by the pavilion during the incident, was also present at the meeting. I saw everything, Laura confirmed. I was walking my dog when I heard the commotion. Mrs. Stevens was being extremely aggressive with these girls who weren't causing any trouble. Olivia Dawson, a 45-year-old board member who had always seemed reasonable to me, examined the photos carefully. Mrs. Stevens, this is very serious, she finally said. We have strict policies against harassment and physical aggression in our community. This is a conspiracy, Camilla changed her tone, losing her composure. Alexander has always been problematic since he moved here. He doesn't respect the association's authority. Judge Thomas Reynolds stepped in again. Having been a judge for 3 decades, I recognize abuse of power when I see it. What we have here is clear, an administrator overstepping her authority and physically assaulting an adult resident. George Harrison, a 62-year-old man who rarely spoke at these meetings, stood up. I propose the immediate suspension of Mrs. Stevens from her duties until a complete investigation is done. The vote was quick and surprising, 5-2 in favor of suspending Camilla. Only her most loyal allies remained by her side. This isn't over, Camilla hissed as she gathered her things. You have no idea who you're dealing with. After the meeting, Thomas and Margaret invited us to dinner. The lakeside restaurant normally would have calmed me, but my mind was in turmoil. Isabella, dear, are you okay? Margaret asked, covering her granddaughter's hand with hers. I'm better now, Isabella replied. I'm just worried that this will affect my college acceptance. Don't worry about that, Thomas assured her. No serious institution would give any weight to those unfounded accusations. I looked at my ex-in-laws with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. Ever since the divorce with their daughter, we'd maintained only formal contact because of Isabella. Thank you for coming today, I finally said. I didn't expect. Isabella called us last night, explained Margaret. She was really upset. We couldn't just stand by. Thomas cleared his throat, always so formal even in personal situations. Alexander, I know we had our differences after the divorce. Perhaps we were unfair to you. We were all hurting, I replied. I was just trying to protect Isabella through it all. And you did a good job, Margaret acknowledged with a gentle smile. Our granddaughter is an amazing young woman. Isabella listened to our conversation with tears welling in her eyes. Maybe something good came out of all this. We're all together again. Dinner continued with a lightness we hadn't experienced in years. For a few hours, I almost forgot about the incident with Camilla. 3 days later, George Harrison knocked on my door. His face was pale, and he nervously looked over his shoulder before entering. "Alexander, we need to talk," he said, refusing the coffee I offered. "It's about Camilla Stevens. I thought she was suspended." "Temporarily," George explained. "But I discovered something while reviewing the association's accounts." George had worked as an accountant for 4 decades before retiring. As a board member, he oversaw the association's finances. In the last 2 years, roughly $120,000 was transferred to a construction company called Cedar Springs Renovations, he explained, opening his laptop. "Supposedly for repairs in the common areas." "And no repairs were done?" "Some were done, but they don't justify that amount," George continued. "Also, I found out that Cedar Springs Renovations is a company registered in Camilla's brother's name. I looked at the spreadsheets filled with numbers he was showing me. And there's more," George said, lowering his voice as though the walls might be listening. "Remember last year when her house was completely renovated? That new pool and the extended kitchen? Yeah, she mentioned something about an inheritance. Coincidentally, the deposits to Cedar Springs started exactly around that time." George plugged a USB drive into the laptop. "I copied all the records here. I also found emails of hers instructing her brother on how to invoice the services to the association." "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, feeling the weight of the situation. "Because you're the only person who publicly stood up to her and survived," George replied with a bitter smile. 3 residents tried questioning her administration in recent years. They all ended up moving after facing mysterious fines and constant problems. At that moment, many things started to make sense. Camilla's overly aggressive behavior with Isabella wasn't just about rules, she was afraid of any challenge to her authority that might expose her schemes. "I'm going to take this to the board at the next meeting," George declared, determined. "With Judge Reynolds on our side, she can't intimidate us." "Be careful," I warned. "She seems dangerous when cornered." George left the USB drive with me. "A backup copy," he explained. "You never know." 2 days later, I received a frantic call from Olivia Dawson. "Alexander, something terrible happened," her voice trembled. "George was arrested this morning." "What? Why?" "Camilla called an emergency meeting last night at 9. Only her allies showed up. She presented documents claiming that George was embezzling money from the association for personal accounts. I felt my stomach drop. That's an outright lie. George was investigating her, not the other way around. The problem is, the documents seem legit," Olivia continued. "And the police chief who made the arrest is Camilla's brother-in-law." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Camilla wasn't just controlling the association, her influence extended to the local police. "She's desperate," I concluded. "She knows George uncovered the truth and is trying to silence him before he can expose her." "What are we going to do?" Olivia asked. "George is almost 63 and has heart problems. He can't stay in jail." "I have the evidence George collected," I replied. "And I know a judge who will be very interested in this case." I called Thomas Reynolds immediately and explained the whole situation. His reaction was exactly what I expected. "I'll be there in 2 hours," he said in a tone that brooked no argument. "Bring the USB drive and meet me at the Pearson & Associates law office downtown." Margaret called Isabella while I drove to the meeting. My daughter, showing a maturity that filled me with pride, was already organizing the friends who had witnessed the incident. "That woman isn't going to get away with what she did," Isabella said on the phone. "First she attacked me, and now Mr. Harrison, who has always been nice to everyone." At the law office, Thomas was accompanied by 2 stern-looking lawyers and a private investigator. Camilla Stevens' story, the investigator began while reviewing the files on the USB drive, goes far beyond Cedar Lake Gardens. I found records from 3 other condos where she held administrative positions in the last 15 years. In all of them, there were allegations of mismanagement and suspicions of fund embezzlement. Why wasn't she sued? I asked. Because she's very good at intimidating people and covering her tracks, one of the lawyers replied. But this time, she made one crucial mistake. What mistake? Margaret asked. Thomas Reynolds smiled for the first time that evening. She messed with the wrong person. No one threatens my family and gets away with it. The Pearson & Associates Law Office became our headquarters for the operation against Camilla Stevens. The data on George's USB drive revealed a scheme much more complex than we initially imagined. Look at this, said Marcus Wilkins, the investigator hired by Thomas and a former police detective with 25 years of experience. The payments to Cedar Springs renovations follow a specific pattern, always right after board meetings where they approved maintenance budgets. And no one ever questioned those amounts? I asked, examining the documents. Camilla always presided over those meetings, explained Olivia, who had joined us. She controlled the agenda and limited the discussion time. When George started asking questions, she always changed the subject or promised to send details later, which never happened. Thomas Reynolds analyzed the documents with the critical eye of someone who had spent decades interpreting evidence in court. Falsification of documents, embezzlement, abuse of power, the list of crimes is long, he concluded. But we need to act carefully. With the local police chief involved, we can't just walk into the station. And what about George? Isabella asked, worried. He's been wrongly imprisoned. I've already submitted a habeas corpus request to a federal judge colleague, Thomas replied. George should be released by tomorrow while they investigate the charges against him. Margaret, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. Camilla has always been like this, even when we were young. You two know each other? I asked in surprise. We went to the same college, Margaret explained with a sigh. She always manipulated situations for her own benefit, but I never imagined it would come to this. That explains why she got so upset when you two appeared at the meeting, I commented, as the pieces started to fall into place. She recognized me immediately, Margaret confirmed. Although we haven't been in touch much since college, Camilla knows my true character. Isabella, who had been typing on her laptop, looked up. I found something interesting. On her brother's social media, there are photos of Camilla's house before and after the renovation. He was boasting about the work his company did, tagging Cedar Springs renovations in the posts. Marcus leaned in to look at the images. This is gold. It proves the connection between her personal renovation and the company that got money from the association. There's more, Isabella continued. In the same posts, he mentions other community projects they did together. I was able to identify 2 of the previous condos where Camilla worked. I looked at my daughter with admiration. Her generation had digital investigation skills many professionals envied. We need someone to get inside the association, Thomas suggested. Someone who can access Camilla's office without raising suspicion. Olivia adjusted her glasses nervously. I can do that. As the board secretary, I have access to most of the physical documents. It's risky, I warned. If Camilla grows suspicious, you could be the next one falsely accused. It's worth the risk, Olivia said firmly. I've never liked how she ran things, but I was too scared to act alone. Now I'm not alone anymore. The following morning, Thomas received news that the habeas corpus for George had been granted. We went to get him when he was released from the station. He looked 10 years older in just one night, his face pale and dark circles under his eyes. Thank you, he said simply as he climbed into the car. I thought no one would believe me. We know the truth, George, I assured him. And we have the evidence you collected. She came to see me in my cell, George revealed, his voice trembling. She said that if I confessed to the embezzlement, I'd get a light sentence and could keep my pension. Otherwise, she'd make sure I spent the rest of my life in jail. Camilla's calculated cruelty was shocking, even for those who already knew about her behavior. She didn't count on Judge Reynolds, I remarked, trying to lift George's spirits. nor on the determination of a united family, Margaret added, placing a comforting hand on George's shoulder. Back at the law office, Olivia arrived with new information. She had managed to copy physical documents that weren't in the digital files, original contracts with suppliers that had been altered in the system. Camilla held 2 versions of every contract, Olivia explained, spreading the papers out on the table. The official version approved by the board and the modified version that she actually executed, with inflated amounts. How did she manage to cash checks with different amounts? Thomas asked. As president, she and the treasurer sign the checks, Olivia replied. And guess who the treasurer is? Her brother-in-law, I concluded, recalling the family connections Camilla maintained in strategic positions. Marcus, who had spent the night investigating, brought more information about Camilla's background. In Oak Ridge Community, her previous condo, she abruptly resigned after allegations of financial irregularities, he reported. But before any formal investigation could start, the association's office suffered an accidental fire that destroyed all the physical records. And before that, in Pinecrest Estates, 3 residents who often questioned her faced a string of strange accidents, vandalized cars, false security alerts in the middle of the night, even a case of food poisoning during a community event. The extent of Camilla's malevolence was becoming clearer. We weren't just dealing with a corrupt administrator, but with someone capable of truly dangerous actions to maintain her power and impunity. We need to act before she realizes we're gathering evidence, I stated. Every day that goes by, she has more time to cover her tracks. Or worse, to create new accusations against us, added Isabella, who rarely showed fear but now seemed genuinely worried. Thomas made the decision, tomorrow, I'll present this evidence to the State Attorney General's office. As a judge, I have direct channels that bypass the local police. At the same time, I'll file a civil suit against Camilla and everyone involved in the scheme. And what about the association? George asked. The residents deserve to know what happened to their money. We'll call an extraordinary General Assembly, suggested Olivia. According to the bylaws, any group of 10 or more owners can call an emergency meeting, bypassing the board. We spent the next several hours organizing every detail of our strategy. Isabella and her friends created a group on the residents' messaging app, carefully reaching out to families we suspected were critical of Camilla. The response was surprising. In just a few hours, more than 30 families had shown support for the extraordinary meeting. Later that night, I received an unexpected call from Laura Simmons, the neighbor who had witnessed the incident with Isabella. Alexander, something strange is happening, she said, her voice tense. There's a car parked in front of my house for 2 hours. When I went out to check, it started and slowly drove away. Lock your doors and don't open them for anyone, I instructed. I'm sending someone to keep an eye on your house. Marcus quickly organized a small team of retired security guards he knew to discreetly monitor the homes of everyone involved in our investigation. It might seem paranoid, but given Camilla's history, caution was warranted. The next morning, Olivia didn't show up at the appointed time. Her calls went straight to voicemail. The concern in the group was palpable. I'll go to her house, I offered. I'll go with you, said Thomas, grabbing his keys. In situations like this, it's better not to be alone. On our way to Olivia's house, we passed by the community pavilion, where it all began. Surprisingly, we saw Olivia coming out of there, looking nervously around. We stopped the car and she ran toward us. They entered the association's office overnight, she exclaimed, out of breath. I got there early to check some documents and found the filing cabinets empty. They even took the computers. Camilla is destroying evidence, Thomas concluded gravely. She must have found out we were investigating. They didn't take everything, Olivia said, opening her purse to reveal a small security camera. I installed this in the office 3 days ago, after we started the investigation. It is streaming to my personal cloud storage. We played the video on my tablet. The footage showed Camilla, her brother-in-law, and 2 unknown men entering the office at 3:47 in the morning, methodically carrying boxes of documents and electronic equipment. This is blatant obstruction of justice, observed Thomas, his tone judicial. With this recording, we can request immediate search warrants. For the first time in days, Olivia smiled. And there's one more thing they don't know. As part of a security policy I set up last year, every file on the association server is automatically synced to an external backup every 24 hours. I have access to that backup. Thomas' face lit up. Olivia Dawson, you've just become our most valuable witness. Back at the law office, we received news that George had been summoned again to the police station for further questioning. It was clear that Camilla was using her influence to pressure him. I'm not going, George declared, his voice firm despite his weakened state. Not without my lawyer, and not in that station. If they want to question me, let them come to Judge Reynolds' office with a proper warrant. The transformation in George was remarkable, from a shy, conciliatory man to someone determined to fight for justice. Camilla's abuse had awakened in him a strength he probably didn't know he had. Thomas made some calls, and within hours, a state investigator took over the case, removing it from the local police's jurisdiction. The tension among our group eased a bit, but we all knew the battle was just beginning. Camilla isn't going to give up easily, Margaret warned, someone who knew her adversary better than anyone else. She will fight with every weapon at her disposal, legal or not. As we reorganized our strategy for the final confrontation, Isabella put into words what many of us were thinking. It's ironic that all this started because she wanted to show power by interrupting a simple birthday party. If she had just left us alone that day. People like Camilla can't leave things alone, Thomas replied, with the wisdom of someone who had seen many similar cases in his career. Control is like a drug for them. And every little display of power feeds the addiction. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this. That night, with all the evidence organized and our strategy set, I faced the fact that I was about to confront not just a legal battle, but a showdown against someone willing to do anything to hold on to her power. The image of Camilla pushing that bottle against my daughter's lips still haunted me, but now it stirred not only indignation, but also determination. Tomorrow, Thomas announced to the gathered group, we'll end Camilla Stevens' reign of terror once and for all.